Hi guys, so over the next few days I'm going to be doing a mini series about objection handling, and I guess the first thing that I should say is that what you really need to do is just check back to one of my previous videos where I talk about objection handling technique in a very general sense, and I talk through a very specific process to go through. But over the next few days what I'm going to do is I'm going to be tackling a few very specific objections and giving you some different tips as to how to approach that very individual objection that you may get. The first objection that I'm going to deal with, and I'm going to deal with that today, is the objection of price, or when somebody says to you that your product, your service, the solution that you're selling is too expensive. For those of you that are telephone based, you'll recognize a situation where you introduce yourself to a prospect, and very early on in the conversation, often even before you get through your introduction, you can get that direct objection back saying, oh no, I'm sorry, it's too expensive. Well, the very first thing that I want to highlight here is that if somebody says to you that what you're selling is too expensive, that's a great response. The reason why it's such a good response is for somebody to actually say to you that what you're selling is too expensive. They must have considered purchasing or buying whatever it is that you're selling before. Because the only reason that they would know that what you're selling is too expensive is if they've actually done the research and they've identified the price previously. Well, if they've already looked into it in the past, that's even better, because what that means is that they already see a need for whatever it is that you're selling. So half the sales process is almost complete, because you don't even need to convince them that they need it, because they know they need it, because they've even looked at it at the past and they've identified the price. All you've got to do is you've got to now justify why they should part with a certain amount of money in order to buy whatever it is that you're selling. Let's just break it down a little bit more, because again, if somebody says something's too expensive, they must be making a comparison in order to use that phrase. Because somebody says it's too expensive, well, compared to what? And one of the best approaches when dealing with objections is almost to challenge the objection, to really drill down to exactly what their problem is. Now, what you first got to identify is that when somebody says to you it's too expensive, is this the real objection? Do they really consider that what you're selling is too expensive? Or is this just one of those objections they're going to use just to try and push you away and to get you off the phone because they don't really want to engage in a conversation with you? In order to be able to test out whether or not this is a real objection or whether this is just them trying to fob you off, we need to ask a couple of questions to challenge the reason why they've said something's too expensive. If somebody was to say to me that your solution is too expensive, I'm going to challenge them a little bit and just to drill down a little bit more. So what I'm going to say to them is, first of all, I'm going to empathize with them. I'm going to say, okay, I completely understand that price, that cost is going to be an issue. However, if I could demonstrate that actually what I'm selling to you will actually pay for itself within the first year, then it would be worth considering, wouldn't it? Or another approach that you could use is say, okay, well, I appreciate that price, that cost is an issue for you. However, if I could demonstrate that this would actually generate a significant return in a very short space of time, then would you consider having a conversation about it? Well, let's just think about their responses, because if they were to turn around and go, no, and just fob me off again straight away, well, let's just be real, because what you've said to them is, look, I understand that price is an issue, but if I could show you that this is going to generate a significant return in a short amount of time, well, what decision maker, what senior decision maker within an organization, what buyer would not want to hear what you were saying if price really was just the issue? If they turn around to you and they say, no, I'm just not interested, we know that actually price is not probably the real objection. The objection is probably that they just really don't want to talk to you at that moment in time for whatever reason. If that's the case, then it's a completely different objection that we're dealing with. Now, obviously, what you've now got to make sure is, now that you've got their attention, if they turn around and say, okay, well, how are you going to demonstrate that this is going to generate a return then? Well, if that's the case, then you've got to drill down. And first of all, you've got to enter into your questioning technique, because for you to be able to demonstrate that your solution, your product, services is going to generate a return, you're now into the sales process, because they've given you the opportunity to engage in a conversation. What you're not going to do at this point, and what would be the biggest and the most fatal mistake, is to suddenly go into a sales pitch. My next approach, when they say, okay, talk to me, tell me how this is going to generate me a return. First of all, what I need to do, Mr. Customer or Mrs. Customer, is I just need to ask you just a few questions in order to clarify a couple of things. And now I'm going to get into my sales questioning. My sales questioning is all geared towards getting the right amount of information so that I can then come up with a very specific pitch as to why they should buy and why they should spend the money I'm asking them to spend on my product. Because remember, the best objection handling techniques aren't about necessarily dealing with the objection there and then. It's about getting them to allow you to continue the conversation so that you can ask the right amount of questions to enable you to deal with the objection later on in the conversation.